So, a question I've often been asked.
Where was the location of the Garden of Eden?
This right here might be the location of the Garden of Eden.
Eden was a gigantic outdoor laboratory.
What?
The Bible describes the location of the Garden of Eden.
Where's the Garden of Eden?
There's 4 rivers that come from it.
Between the Tigris and the Euphrates, where the Garden of Eden is located.
Where is the Garden of Eden located? You know, the interesting thing is, whenever I ask Christians that question, and sometimes I ask those that are there at a large conference, well, the majority will say, over there in the Middle East where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers are.
It's right next to the river.
Well, I always remind people, just because the majority say something doesn't mean it's right. As I've often said to people, remember, the majority of people didn't survive the flood either. They certainly were wrong in their rejection of God's word. The Garden of Eden could not have been in that area we today call the Middle East, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers are. Let me explain to you why. First of all, what is the description of the Garden of Eden from the Bible in Genesis 2? There was 4 rivers from one source. That is not what we see over there in the Middle East today, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers are. That's number one. Number two, underneath that area today, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers are, there's thousands of feet of sediment with fossils in them, dead things. So if you're saying the Garden of Eden was there, you're saying there was all this death already in existence under the garden. The Bible makes it clear that death is a result of sin, and we would say that those layers with all those dead things in, those fossils, that's from the flood of Noah's day. And that's the third point I want to make. Noah's flood was a global event. Have you ever seen what a local flood can do? It's destructive. It'll erode canyons. It'll erode hundreds, thousands of feet of sediment. It'll redeposit sediment. It's catastrophic. Imagine what a global flood would do. It would rip up the whole earth and redeposit all sorts of sediment. It would destroy where the Garden of Eden was. You wouldn't have a clue where the Garden of Eden was. And that brings me to the fourth point too. And that is, on day 3, when God made the land to appear, it says that he gathered the waters together into one place. So presumably, the land was in one place. We believe there was one continent before the flood that split up probably during the flood, towards the end of the flood. And what we're seeing today is just residual movement, but the continents were catastrophically split up. We wouldn't have a clue where the Garden of Eden was at all. And you know why this matters? I'll tell you why it matters. It matters because we need to make sure people understand the destructive nature of the flood. It would have destroyed the surface of the earth. When you're saying the Garden of Eden was over there where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers are today, then what did Noah's flood do? Nothing? A tranquil flood? There's no such thing as a tranquil flood. It just doesn't happen. So it's important that we believe what God's word says too, and there were 4 rivers from one source. That doesn't fit. And then one last thing, people will say, well, how come it has the same names, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers? Well, think about this. When people went from the old world to the new world in Australia, they used some of the names from the old world over there in England in the new world in Australia. The same happened in America. We even have the New England states. And so don't you think that when Noah came from the old world to the new world, some of those names they'd used previously, they could use in the new world as well? Well, there are many great questions related to the Garden of Eden, and many that can be answered with a plain reading of the text and following through to the logical conclusions. One common question is, where did Cain get his wife? Well, watch this video to discover the answer.